Grazie. Thank you, Daiga. Thank you for the permission to be here. I feel honored. Urbino is honored to be invited here to Rīgā. The whole Marke region is honored that we are invited here for the Marke Week in Latvia and in Rīgā. And also Svētā Katrīna is honored to be here, and it's a pleasure for her to be in this wonderful museum. I did not understand what you said, Rīgā, of course, so I just let me tell you, I'm originally Austrian. I'm from Vienna, and I now for 3 years I'm working, nearly 3 years I'm working in Italy, in Urbino, in this wonderful Renaissance museum, and I'm responsible for the federal museums there in the Marke region. I try now a little bit to explain you or to tell you something why Urbino and the territory of the Marke region is so important and so connected with Raphael. Urbino, as we say, and we use also this sentence for our publicity and our commercials, is the city of Raphael. It's la città di Raffaello, Urbino. And this is not only because Raphael is born in Urbino, it's the whole influence of this beautiful cradle of Renaissance which influenced him for his whole life. And this atmosphere, this spirit is still alive in Urbino. And this is what I try to show you. Just before I start with my explanations, I want to show you a short video, a short film that I don't know whoever have been to Urbino and to the Marke region. I just want to show you a short video about that. Everybody knows what is Urbino. Urbino is a small city. It has only 15,000 residents, plus 16,000 students. It's an important university city. It's an old university city. It's the third oldest university city of Italy. That means it's also one of the oldest universities of the world. And I try now to show you. Let me see where it is. Okay, we have it. The video here. Echo. I hope it works. We did not try it. Yeah. You can see this area around the nature, around Urbino, is not as soft as it's in the Toscana, in the well-known Toscana. It's the hills are stronger and the nature is stronger there. The video is made from the direction where everybody came once to Urbino. It's from Florence. When you came to Florence, you saw the towers of the Palazzo, and the Palazzo Ducale is connected with the Palazzo Ducale is connected with the main part of the city. It's not one freestanding building. It's together with the cathedral, together with university houses, and this is also why Baldassare Castiglione, in his famous book Il Cortegiano, wrote that it's a palace in form of a city. Close to the palazzo is the cathedral, the dome. This is the side where you enter the museum now. This is the place between the dome, the cathedral, and the palace. This big building down here is the theatre, the Sanzio Theatre, which was built in the 17th century, so later it was not there from the beginning. But you can imagine, you can see the connection between the palace building and the rest of the city. This is San Francesco Church and the Collegio Rafaēla, where the part of the university is. Yeah. Into the Palazzo Ducale, the famous Città Ideale painting, which is the example of perspective. Yes. So, why was Urbino that important? Urbino was a normal medieval city until around 1450, the middle of the 15th century. Then Federico da Montefeltro killed his stepbrother, Od Antonio, and became the Duke of Urbino. And then he was, for 50 years, nearly 40 years, he was the Duke of Urbino, and he succeeded in calling some of the most famous Renaissance artists working in Italy. As architects, Luciano Larana and Francesco di Giorgio Martini, who built the palace, and other artists like Piero della Francesca, Paolo Uccello, then later Gerolamo Cenga, Luca Signorelli. And he had one important artist. This was the artist of his court, of his palace, which was called Giovanni Santi. And this was not only the painter for the palace, it was also, he wrote theater plays, he was organizing events, he was a universal artist, as it was also normal in Renaissance time. And this Giovanni Santi became in 1483 the father of Raffaello Sanzio. And Raffaello was born in this city, and he met most probably all of these famous architects and artists. And it was not, you cannot compare this with a high Renaissance city like Florence or Rome, where Renaissance was made and was the contact with the artists were only from the high noble people like the Medici or the Borgia or from the Pope. It was lived in Urbino from everybody, and this is the beautiful thing in Urbino, that Renaissance was made for everybody. The Duke commissioned a lot of artworks for churches and normal palaces also, and the artists were working for a lot of people there, and it was also thought from everybody in this spirit, in this philosophy of Renaissance. That means, for example, that the famous library of the Duke Federico da Montefeltro, which was a lot of handwritten books, in this time, 1450 was also the beginning of the printing of the printed book from Gutenberg, and Duke Federico did not trust these modern innovations of printed books. He wanted only handwritten books, and he had a very beautiful library full of these handwritten important manuscripts. And this library was open for everybody, for all citizens. They could go during the day, the palace was open, normal people could enter, could go to the library and learn something from this book. And on the outside of the palace were stone panels with the technology of this time. How to bring water to a higher level, how to raise an obelisk, machines of war and machines for agriculture were explained how to build, and this knowledge was given to the citizens. This is what we know, and I give it to you. And this was on the outside, on stone panels on the outside of the palace, so everybody could see it. And in 1502, when Leonardo da Vinci came to Urbino with Cesare Borgia together, he saw these panels and he studied them, and he wanted to stay only a few days in Urbino, but then he remained for 1 or 2 months in Urbino to study these machine plans on the outside. So the big deal of Federico was that he succeeded to such a small, not important city came important artists. And in this open-minded spirit, in this open-minded atmosphere was born Raffaello. His mother died when he was 7-8 years old, and his father died when he was 11 years old. Then he had to leave Urbino and he went to Perugia. Perugia is today, with a car, it's 1.5 hours. Former times maybe 2 days to travel, and there was in Perugia was working Perugino, which was a good friend of his father, of Giovanni Santi, and they worked together. And Raffaello was traveling. He came always back to Urbino his whole life. He was very connected with Urbino, and he was traveling between Perugia and Urbino. And he was then influenced by Perugino. In the beginning, he was, of course, and this was not always clear in the history of art, in the studies, influenced by his father. But he learned the technique of his father until he was 11 years old. We know that he already as a child helped his father, and then from Perugino. Now something was happening. In 1502 and 1503, 1504, Raffaello was 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. He was working already for 8, 9 years for Perugino. He became better and better. And he was then in 1504, they decided, we don't know why, to do the same theme. The wedding of Maria and Joseph of the Holy Family. On the right side, you see the version done by Perugino, and with Joseph on the left side of the Christ, and you see this traditional composition of the painting. It's not bad, it's in the tradition of Renaissance. There is a movement of the figures, they are looking each other, they are looking outside, there is a background, there is a landscape in behind, there are figures closer, far away, there is a point of view, but it's still, how do you say, too much tradition, it's too much not moving, no? It's too medieval still. And on the left side you see the version of Raffaello. You see this perfect composition between the Virgin Maria and the Christ, who is giving his head to his left side, with Joseph, with his arm, the other figures, somebody is doing out, the knee of this person. Every detail has its function in the composition of the painting. And this is a perfect example for Renaissance composition of a painting. And then, after this painting, it was clear that Raffaello became better than his teacher, than his master, better than Perugino. So he could not stay anymore in the school of Perugino, and he left Perugia because he was inspired and attracted by two other artists. Maybe you have heard of them. One was Leonardo da Vinci, and the other one, Michelangelo Buonarroti. They were working in Florence, and so he said, I have to go to Florence, this is my future. And he left in 1504 to Florence, and we know that he met Leonardo, we know that he saw La Mona Lisa, La Gioconda, and that this changed his mind. He saw La Mona Lisa and he changed his way of painting in this moment. Leonardo was quite old at this time already. Michelangelo was very young, and so it was Raffaello. But how was he able to? He was 21 years old. He was going to Florence, and he thought, "Here I am. You're waiting for me. What should I do?" He need connections. He need people introducing him, and this was Giovanna Feltria, because you have to know that the Duke Federico de Montefeltro had 6 daughters. 6 daughters, and then the 7th child finally was a son, was Guidobaldo. And the 6 daughters, one of the 6 daughters was Giovanna, and Giovanna married Giovanni della Rovere from Senegal, from the della Rovere family, which was an important family also in Florence. So Giovanna Feltria introduced Raffaello in Florence and made him know the important people. And said, this is our famous painter from Urbino, please give him a chance, let him work for you. And here we think that this famous painting, La Muta di Raffaello, we don't know it 100% sure, is Giovanna Feltria. that this is this person, this is one of the daughters of Federico, which introduced him to Florence. Then, working 4 years in Florence, 1508, he left Florence and went to Rome because he was called by Pope Giulio II. He was 25 years old. Giulio II was a member of the Della Rovere family. So still the family of the husband of Giovanna Feltre, which was one of the daughters of Federico. Just to finish the story of the family in Urbino, because this is important for the palace and for our museum today. After Federico also was his son Guidobaldo. He was always ill, always sick. He could not have children, so he died also quite young. So he adopted a child of Giovanna Feltre, of this lady, and this kid was called, this child was called Francesco Maria I della Rovere. And there started, already in 1520, there started the Della Rovere family, which was then for 100 years, a little bit more than 100 years, the Duke family of Urbino. They did not live anymore in Urbino because the palace was too big, it was not too heat, it was complicated, and they lived in Urbania, in Pesaro, in Gubbio, in smaller palaces. And the child of Francesco Maria I was Guidobaldo II, then Francesco Maria II, then another, and so away until, and then here we are with Guidobaldo II and Francesco Maria. We are in the time of Tiziano, of Titian. You have to imagine in these palaces have been 15 paintings made by Titian in Urbino. Until 1631, the last member of the Della Rovere family, which was Vittoria Della Rovere, married, unfortunately, a member of the Medici family and brought everything to Florence. Half of the Palazzo Pitti is from Urbino, and from Gubbio, and from Perugia, and from Fossombrone, and from Pesaro. And we know from documents in the archive that 500 carriages with horses left this area to Florence, full of furniture, arazzi, tapestries, paintings, and what she did not need, Victoria, and what she did not like, she sold in a public auction in the main place of Urbania. Who wants this arazzo? I don't need it in Florence. And so the palaces were empty and were used, the palace in Urbino was used then for, from the cardinals, from the church. Urbino was part of the Vatican state then, and there were the Barberini family in the beginning, and then the Albani family, which has also Pope Clement XI, Clemens XI was the Pope from Urbino in the 17th century. Then the palace was used for administration. It was a prison, and then also around 1900 they tried to sell the palace. There are people living still in Urbino. They said my grandfather was offered the palace of Urbino to buy it for, I don't know, 30,000 lire, and I'm so happy that he did not buy it, so I'm not responsible now for the palace. And then they decided only 100 years ago, 1912, they decided to make a museum out of it, but it was empty in this time. There were only open 7 rooms of the palace of Urbino, and now it took nearly 100 years to conservation, restoration, to make it. Now we have opened nearly everything. It's 80 rooms, and also the basements are very beautiful and important. But also when you visit it today, it's the National Gallery of the Marche region. It's full of important paintings. We cannot have an idea how it was at the time of Federico, full of beautiful Renaissance furniture and full of tapestries. Raffaello, Bertonare Raffaello, came to Rome 1508, called by Giulio II della Rovere. I'm sure also Giovanna Feltre introduced him there, and he was called to do the affrescos in the private apartment of the Pope, in the Vatican Palace, the so-called Stanze di Raffaello. In the end, in Rome, he was responsible, Bramante was there, he was responsible for architecture for the Pope, and Bramante died, and the young Raphael became also the responsible for all architectural projects of the Pope. As it was in Renaissance, you're not only a painter, you have to be a universal artist. That means you're an architect, you're a sculptor, you're a painter. And he was, in the end, he had 6 workshops working for him. He made a lot of money, he was very rich and had a lot of responsibility. But unfortunately, with 37 years, he died 1520 in Rome. And there was a big ceremony for his funeral. And now he's in the tomb is in the Pantheon in Rome. But now we go back, just, I'm sure most of you knew the story of the life of Raphael, but what is the Santa Caterina telling us? Santa Caterina, which we brought to Riga and which is exhibited now for 1 month in this wonderful museum here, is made in an important part of Raphael's life. It's exactly in this moment between being a scholar, being a student of Perugino, traveling between Urbino and Perugia, being influenced by Chenga, by Signorelli and other artists, and being himself the master and opening his first workshops. This is the Santa Caterina, which you will see in another room then. And this is made, as we think, in 1502. So 2 years, he was 18, 19 years old. He was working in Perugino's workshop, and we think it's part of a private altar, because it's very small, it's 30 centimeters high only, and it's the right part of an altar. On the left side is Santa Maddalena, which is in a private collection now in the United States. And in the middle, these are the 2 doors to close also the altar. And in the middle was, we are sure, a Madonna with child or a Holy Family with Joseph and Maria and child. But it's lost. The middle panel is lost. We don't know where it is. Maybe someday we will find it. And this is the right part of this altar, and we have here, in the same time, he was doing this crucifixion, the so-called Mont crucifixion, because it was in a collection of Mont, where you have the San Giovanni, which is in the same tradition. And we have at the same time we're close to this painting of Perugino and Raffaello, and I just choose one of the paintings of Giovanni Santi, of the father of Raphael, where you have, when you look at the detail, we have this detail, which is in the same tradition. I tried to put them together. Yeah. So you have here Giovanni Santi, that's chronologically. You have San Giovanni from the Mont crucifixion. You have Santa Caterina. Close to Santa Caterina is the Virgin Mary from Perugino. So this is Perugino, not the last one. And this is Raffaello at the same time, or 1 year before. We don't know who copied from whom, or Raffaello from Perugino, or Perugino from Raffaello. And the last one is the Virgin Mary from the wedding from Raffaello, from the painting which what he did when he left, month before he left Perugia. So you see in the last one the step he made. In the last one you see what happened. He became independent from Giovanni Santi, he became independent from Perugino, and he became Raffaello himself, an autonomous artist and one of the most famous living here. And so the Santa Caterina, which I brought you and which the Marche region is now lending you for 1 month, is exactly in this moment. And this is exactly what we are telling as Marche region and as Pētera Urbino and as the city of Urbino, that we don't have a huge number of Raffaello paintings because he left Urbino when he was 11 years old. But we have the whole story behind it. We have the atmosphere, we have the spirit, we have the frescoes of his colleagues, and all the influence. Why he became Raffaello, you can understand only visiting Urbino, and I see it with the eyes of a tourist still. I'm working there for 3 years now, but I'm every day again. I'm so enthusiastic of the beauty of the city and from the landscape and from the nature, how everything is working together, and of this spirit when you walk through the Palazzo Ducale and through Urbino, of the origin of this cradle of Renaissance, which did not change a lot from Renaissance time. It's you don't feel this atmosphere when you walk through Florence, and you don't feel it when you're in Rome. There's too much competition, there's too much other influences. This really spirit of Raphael you have only in, you can feel only in Urbino, and I like the idea so much that the child, Raffaello Bambino, Raffaello the child, was running through the palace and with his father who was working there, and we are on the same stones, on the same floor that we are now visiting the museum, and he saw some of the paintings or the production of paintings we can now admire at the Palace of Urbino, like Piero della Francesca, La Flagellazione, or the La Città Ideale, or Paolo Ugello. The same paintings we are now looking at this palace when were in production when he, maybe as a young child with his father, was working there and had his inspirations from Urbino and the famous artists working there. So this is now night impression of Urbino. I can only invite you to come to use this flight. There's now a flight, as I was told, from directly from Rīgā to Ancona in the summer months, from May or from June until September. There's a direct flight from Rīgā to Ancona, and you can come only for a weekend or for 2 days and be inspired, as it was Raffaello from Urbino, because in 1520, you know, Raffaello died, so we have 500 years of the death of Raphael, and we're starting now with the celebrations. Next year we start with a big exhibition and with a lot of activities around the Raphael, 500 years of Raphael's death in Urbino, and you will see when you come, you will feel the same atmosphere and spirit of Renaissance as Raphael did, and I hope you will be also inspired. Thank you for the invitation, and I hope to see you all in Urbino.